Yep, cool. All right, now this was a little meeting. I'm going to tell you about Polio Australia. Somebody asked whether we're statewide or national. We are national, and I'll explain how that works in a minute. This is a group that we had at our We're Still Here campaign, because basically one of the things that that people always ask me when I say I'm from Polio Australia, and they go, oh, they're still polio sufferers, right? And I go, yeah, quite a lot actually. You know, do people still get polio? Well, you already heard that no, we don't actually get polio these days in Australia. But what we represent is the late effects of polio, because whenever we go to a Rotary group or whatever, they go, oh yeah, no, we know all about polio because we're involved in the Polio Plus campaign. And I said, yes, and you're doing a fantastic job to eradicate polio, but what's happening at home? Nothing for the polio survivors. All right, so let me sort of see if that works. Okay, so you know how Louise showed you all those children sort of strapped down on the board. This is the actual Thomas splint. You right, Brian?
Yes, sir.
And as you said, they were sort of stood up in these frames. The double Thomas splint had the arms out as well. I've heard stories of people that were actually laid down flat. There was sort of like a hole at the end of their bed, like a massage chair, and they were actually laid down fully in the frame, and you know they were in this thing 24/7. They were actually put on on a nice day, because of course you know that's all part of rehabilitation. And you put people in the fresh air on a nice day. So you know if there's a weather change, well that's just too bad. You know because you're actually popped out on the balcony on your like a piece of furniture. So here you are, you picked up, you put there. You're sort of stuck like that in a row with a whole bunch of other people, and we're talking about through the epidemic years, there are lots and lots and lots of kids on this balcony, and a lot of people are also now starting to experience skin cancer because you know they've just been fried out on the balcony having this weather. Anyway. We know that between the 60s, the 30s and 60s, 40,000 Australians were recorded as having paralytic polio. But as Steve already mentioned, that's only fewer than 1% of all polio infections. So you've got 99 other people that didn't have 50% of their motor neurons killed off, but of course there would always be subclinical damage at less than 50% of your motor neurons killed off, which is the point where you have the paralysis. So Polio Australia works on the figure of having about 400,000 survivors of polio living in Australia today. We can't actually sort of go, yes, here's the record of that, but we're just basing it on the numbers of people who had paralytic polio, because there are no numbers, right? There's no numbers today. What I also need to say is that I am not a health professional, all right? I'm a community development officer. So when you sort of hear me talking, you know, I'm sort of like coming from a community development perspective as well. Now, what happened was that in the 1980s, we had these conferences that started off in the US. And a number of Australian polio survivors attended the 87 one and brought back the information. I don't know how they found out. Obviously they had sort of connections because, of course, you know, we weren't using the internet and email the way, you know, Facebook, all sorts of, you know, information exchange. But obviously people were communicating, writing letters, heaven forbid, and finding out this information. So at that point, a whole range of networks popped up all over Australia, probably around the late 1980s, early 1990s. And those networks ended up developing support groups. Now, most of you, I think, put your hand up when we asked the question, do you actually work with polio survivors, or have you got... now, do you know whether those people are actually members of support networks? Some may be, some may not. In Australia, in Victoria rather, I used to actually coordinate the Polio Network for Victoria, which is auspiced by another organisation called Advocacy Australia. At that time, there were 16 support groups throughout Australia. There's a big one in Ballarat and Bendigo, but there's a number of them in the metropolitan areas, you can imagine. And as somebody said, you know, some are better than others, some are more active than others. You don't have to be a member of a support group, but they can help when they're looking at what is available in the community and what's working for them. And look, very young Steve.
Dinner then.
Okay, so the late effects of polio, as we've already discussed, cause significant ongoing problems. And peer support has been the thing that has really, you know, sparked the interest of working more strongly with health professionals in the community, so that we can so people can actually get the support that they need. This wasn't happening by itself. With Polio Services Victoria as an example, that was born out of the closure of the Fairfield Infectious Diseases Hospital. They started off with 900, and then they actually thought that was actually, from my memory, they actually started off with about 300. When Louise came on board, they had tripled to 900. Now they've got about 1,300. And there could be a lot more, but they only service Victoria, and there is about a 6-month waiting list to get into that service, which is why it's so important, and this is something that I discussed with Louise and Polio Services Victoria. It's so important that we have, you know, we upskill people like yourselves, the health professionals in the community, because just referring them through to something like Polio Services Victoria is not necessarily the answer. They might not even be able to get in to Polio Services Victoria for another 6 to 9 months. It could be anything like that. So we really need, it's born out of the need for polio survivors to get health services, that we got the networks going, and how Polio Australia was born. We're a grassroots up organisation. In 2007, actually, all the network hierarchy got together, and we actually had this meeting in New South Wales and decided that we really did need a national organisation. One of the key reasons for that is because most of the networks were being facilitated and coordinated by polio survivors who were volunteers, who are experiencing the late effects of polio, who have got serious fatigue issues, right? I was one of the few people, being a community development worker, that hadn't had polio, that was running a network. So I went along to this particular session, and you know, everybody said yes, we definitely need a national presence. We don't know how long, as state networks, we're even going to be able to, you know, support ourselves. So we do need a national presence. And I actually put my hand up well, I'll go back to this in a sec, but I put my hand up at the end of 2009, and I said, you know, I'm prepared to actually do this if we can find a little bit of funding to pay me. That would be good. What we decided our purpose was it was committed to standardising quality information and service provision across Australia for polio survivors. And vision is that all polio survivors in Australia have access to appropriate healthcare and the support required to maintain independence and make informed lifestyle choices. Now, those orange books that I've handed you are one of the ways that we're looking at doing this. That was an overview that was actually put together for us by GlaxoSmithKline, who provide us a little bit of money every so often for our annual retreats. But they had a volunteer day, and their medical team said, look, we've heard talking about this, I've been applying everywhere to try and get funding to produce a series of manuals for polio, for the treatment of the late effects of polio. Haven't been successful in doing that, but GlaxoSmithKline, bless their cotton socks, put this together with us, and so at least we have an overview. We have since managed to get another grant and have commissioned an attacker to write up the next volume, which will be specifically around physiotherapy and occupational therapy and how that works in with each other for polio survivors. So we're hoping to launch that in October, which is Polio Awareness Month. So these are things, you know, that we're quite serious about, getting some clear clinical practice, best practice sort of guidelines around in the treatment of people with late effects polio. So we became incorporated in 2009, as I said. We managed to get a tiny little philanthropic grant which enabled me to start working on a part-time basis, and I set up an office in Kew. So Polio Australia is me sitting behind a desk in Kew with a phone and a laptop and a volunteer in Brian, and my other volunteer who's a polio survivor. So it's a fairly small concern, but I think GlaxoSmithKline often say, and I think it's not without justification, that we punch well above our weight insofar as what we're doing at a national level. It's handy for me to actually run this inaugural session in Victoria because I am in Victoria and because I've already worked with polio survivors since 2004, right? So I know who's around. But we're really blessed in Victoria to have the facilities that we do have in Polio Services Victoria and the likes of specialists like Steve de Graaf. That isn't in any other state at all, right? So we're the smallest state, right? We've got the most, well, apart from Tasmania, unfortunately they don't have anything. But we really do have, the most amount of expertise in our little state. Okay, in 2010, I managed to run the first Australia Polio Health and Wellness Retreat in New South Wales. These are the happy smiling faces of the 60-odd people that we had there. And a year later, we were lucky enough to get in touch with the Balnaves Foundation, who decided to cough up for 3 years full-time salary for me, which was fantastic, although that finished in December 2013. So the way we got onto this guy was because, do you remember Talking Heads? The program Talking Heads on ABC? And the lovely Neil Balnaves was on there, and he said, oh yeah, I had polio when I was a kid, but it didn't affect me, blah, blah, blah. And we went, wow. Okay, so I got in touch with my New South Wales colleagues and I said, have you heard of this guy? And they said, no, never heard of him, he's not in our books anywhere. They got in touch with him, we organised an appointment with him, we schmoozed and did as much as we could, and he goes, okay, I'll give you 3 years, see how you go. Well, 4 years later, we're still going strong, but we still have no money. So at our last AGM, which was held in December, I was offered another 3-year contract with a pay rise, modest as it is anyway, with the salary that I get anyway. And I'm going, wow, that's interesting because I've got no idea how we're going to fund it at this point. We have done intensive lobbying because we just happen to have, the president at this point in time is Dr. John Tierney, who is a polio survivor, and he was a senator, a Liberal senator from the 1990s to 2005, and that's his job. He does political lobbying. And he said, oh, look, he said, come along, I'll take you to Canberra and blah, blah, blah. Well, we go there on a regular basis. And we're going there again in March to launch an official parliamentary friendship group, which is lovely. We've got, about 20 plus members. We've had 4 of these 5 bipartisan parliamentary patrons from the beginning, from 2010, I suppose. We recently managed to get Rachel Seward on board, who is a Greens senator as well, because Rachel was the only person in the whole of Parliament that argued against the 65-year cut-off for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which is a major, major problem for polio survivors. Right? So we invited her to come on board and she said, yeah, sure. So, like lots and lots and lots of influence. You read any Hansard, if you Google Hansard and post-polio, since 2010, the mention of post-polio and Polio Australia in Hansard has increased 1,000-fold. All right, so we're there, just no money. And probably even less likely with this government. So
You might have to go overseas.
Polio Australia in India. So key programs. One of our key programs is Polio Health and Wellness Retreat. So we ran our first one in New South Wales. We had probably about, I think 60, as I said, 60 odd people. It was based on something that I picked up when I went to the States in 2009. In 2008, I was lucky enough to get a Churchill Fellowship, and I visited a number of post-polio institutes while I was there. One of the places that I visited was Warm Springs, which is actually where Roosevelt did his rehabilitation. The following year, in 2009, Post-Polio Health International ran a retreat and conference at Warm Springs. So I had to go back there. And the retreat was where...
Sorry to interrupt, Marianne. Can I get your keys to move your car?
Yeah. Of course it would be this particular time, wouldn't it?
Trust me.
Well, yeah, go for it. It's orange, and it's pretty dirty.
I'll be back.
Maybe. Alright. Okay, so went to this retreat, fantastic, loved the model, brought it back to Australia. That was in 2009, ran it in 2010, and it's been a hit ever since. And it's basically, we work on the whole concept, the body, the mind, the spirit over the 4 days. And it's really to provide, that holistic self-management kind of concept. People are invited to come with their partners so that their partners can actually get a feel for what it's like for the polio survivor as well. And one of the key things that the polio survivors are saying is, I've never, since I've been a child, I've never been in a space with so many polio survivors, right? And just being in a space and being able to share their coping strategies, their childhood memories and all that sort of stuff has been so good for both them and their partners and their relationships, right? So it's much bigger than just the biomechanical sort of stuff. It's really very much in for the mental health kind of aspects as well. When I run these things, I can't necessarily guarantee that I'm going to have the delightful Steve or the Natasha or the Louises to come along. So I look for people that are like yourselves who have an interest in learning more about and working with polio survivors. Because if I sat any one of you in a room full of polio survivors, by the end of that session, you'd all be experts, because they'll definitely tell you all about what you need to know about them. So that's worked really, really well for both polio survivors in any particular area and any of the health professionals that I've managed to come on board. All of a sudden, they've been immersed in the issues of related to polio. We've also got something called the Australian Polio Register, which we established in 2010. Now, those little DL size brochures that you got all contain an Australian Polio Register. Any of you who have polio survivors who are not on this register, can I please encourage you to ask them to sign up?
Yeah, it's not that one.
This little brochure, on the inside panel is is the Australian Polio Register, but it's also on our website. I know that's a tiny little thing here. You can download an A4 version from our website. Thank you. And you can actually, this is the only place that you'll get this kind of data, and it's really interesting because some guy rang me up the other day from the Sunshine Coast and he said, I went to see my neurologist and I told him that I'd had polio and I couldn't find my records, and he went online and he found the records of all the polio survivors and he said I wasn't on it. And I said, there's no such thing. I said, unless he was looking at our Australian Polio Register. And the only way you can get on the Australian Polio Register is if you register to it, right? So the neurologist is sort of going, oh, here's the Australian Polio Register. I'll find out if my client's had polio. Not on there because he hasn't registered. So we do have a clinical advisory group, which we're not able to utilise fully at this point because of our incredibly limited funding. But it's a range of health professionals. Once again, you've got the delightful Steve and the delightful Natasha, and a few other people. Most of the other people here are from other states because, of course, it's a national organisation. But basically, we ask all our clinical health professionals to provide feedback on things like the clinical practice manuals. And this is where we are. So, where we are, you know, like it's this whole building. Oh, that's impressive, isn't it? Yep. So it is me once again. Laptop, phone.
I've done all those steps.
Yep, I'm just sort of like in this little space here. Now, I'm not a drop-in centre. I'm not a place where polio survivors come and call me. I am not the one that I want your clients to call. I am a national organisation. There are state networks in amongst the handouts. You would have seen an A4. That's the one. Thank you very much. Very good resource over here. So on this particular flyer, which isn't perfect because it's got this really weird purple thing going on, and our colour's blue over there. But I bought them because that's what I had at the time. Down the bottom, in that tiny little print, is the phone numbers for all the state networks. Okay. So you will tell your client to get in touch with their own particular state network. Obviously here it's Victoria, and the state network contacts can actually send out information on the general information on the late effects of polio, but also on what types of support groups there are in the area and in contacts and things like that. So that is basically it in a nutshell. It's there 25 to 5, so we're 5 minutes over time. But if you've got any quick questions that I can help you with, or if you would like to call me, by all means, I don't, as I said, I don't want to be inundated with client phone calls, but if you would like to call me, by all means do. My email is there, office@polioaustralia.org, website, 3w.polioaustralia.org.au. I would welcome any questions, either now or later. I'll hang around for the next 15 minutes. But at this time, I don't particularly want to keep you any longer because I know that you're probably going to battle against traffic. So, any quick questions?
Just say your funding for your position.
I've said there is no funding for my position.
Okay, because it ran out in December.
Yep.
So yours.
Virtually.
In terms of the office space and all the administrative costs, is that being funded?
My volunteer, not Brian down the end here, who's as poor as a church mice, but my polio volunteer funds my office.
Wow. That's huge, isn't it?
It is.
May I just quickly, is the Australian Polio Register, is that for people that are living in Australia, not necessarily born in Australia?
Correct.
Or,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're living here, but they can be born anywhere.
Cool. Should be
Yeah.
back at work in about 3 weeks.
I'm wondering if that's the ones
You name it, we've applied for it, but I'll look at it. Actually, Brian will look at it. Okay, look, thank you so much for your time. Please leave the evaluation forms before you leave. As I said, I'm happy to I'll hang around if you've got any independent questions. Thank you so much to Steve once again because he's still here. And also, Natasha's gone, hasn't she? I have to apologise. Yeah, but Andrea, thank you so much for working in with us to put on this show, and thank you for your interest. Thank you very much.